So what about Elon Musk? I read that you do think he's a genius. Is he a force for good or a force for evil?
Mostly good, I think. I had this moment where my son said SpaceX is launching, and we went out. We live in Florida on the beach, and we went out and we saw that rocket going up, and it was one of those kind of hallmark moments with my boys. And anyone who builds electric vehicles, I own a Tesla. It's an amazing product, puts people in space. You just have to admire someone who's been able to do that. With the comments I made around not being a great example for young men, when I look at the two men that have had the most visibility over the last decade relative to previous decades, it's been Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And I wonder what message they're sending to our boys. And the message I would get or glean from them generally is get really rich so you can be really coarse. And I don't think it's the right message to send to our young men. I think going on Twitter and calling a cave diver a pedophile it lacks all grace. I think saying you're taking your company private at $420 a share when there was no veracity to that claim, and the SEC gives you a hall pass. I just don't think it's difficult. I want to be clear on the whole. I think Elon Musk has been good for the world, good for the planet, and I think electrifying the auto industry has got tremendous benefits. I just wonder, where are our role models, Megyn? I mean, you have a son. Where, kind of who do you want your boys to look to?
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is one of my problems early on with Trump, was what, the way he talks about people, what a bully he seemed, and certainly not someone I want my sons to model or my daughter to model in any way.
Right.
And when it comes to behavior, now I could make the opposite argument about the way he governed his policies versus, Joe Biden's a perfectly nice man, but look what happened in Afghanistan, right? It's like that argument doesn't always work with politicians as we see it. I mean, JFK wasn't exactly the best husband in the world, but
Agreed.
right. So we could go down the line. But what is it about tech in particular that seems to attract a bunch of assholes?
Well, it's our fault, I think. I think that, going very deep on this, when a nation becomes wealthier and more educated, its reliance on a super being and church attendance goes down. Our brain is big enough to ask very complicated questions, but not big enough to answer them. So into that void slips super beings. And when we start kicking those super beings out, for better or worse, we need answers. And there's nothing that feels more godlike or Jesus-like or mystical than technology, because I still can't figure out how my phone is able to do what it does. If I have a very serious question, do I ask a priest, rabbi, mentor, scholar, or boss? No, I ask Google, and I trust Google's answer more than I trust any priest or rabbi. So the new Jesus Christ of our generation are a man who denied his own blood under oath when he was worth $250 million, better known as Steve Jobs, or a guy who believes he can be the CEO of two companies, Jack Dorsey. So we suffer from an idolatry of innovators. And we have issued the mother of all hall passes for the CEOs of tech companies that we would never issue for CEOs of other industries. And the result is they're taking advantage of it, and they're doing things that we just wouldn't have tolerated from other industries. I mean, my question is, if Michael Milken committed crimes today, but he was the CEO of a tech company, not a junk bomb firm, would he have gone to jail for 10 years? Did Michael Milken do anything worse than what Mark Zuckerberg is doing right now?
Do you think it all started with Steve Jobs? I mean, he obviously was the number one, like the biggest one, the biggest names and the name and probably the most important. And he was known for being such an ass, as you point out, denying his child and so on. The stories about him are legion about what a jerk he was at every turn.
I think it's been a slow creep of technology. Slowly but surely has become such an ubiquitous part of our life. There's such wonder and awe around technology. And quite frankly, it's made so many people so much money that everybody has a friend whose daughter went to Google and got rich. People are just really excited about what Amazon can do in terms of delivering their Nespresso pods within 48 hours. Netflix is a wonder. And maybe you own Amazon stock in your 401k. So it's easy. And our elected officials, the fastest way to look old is to start going after big tech. It's like putting on mom jeans. It just ages you. And so a 73-year-old insurance
Those are
salesman,
back in, by the way, mom jeans.
They are back in. That makes you look younger. But I just think we've treated these companies, there's a two-class system in our legislative branch and across our economy. It's the way we treat tech companies and the way we treat everybody else. Again, if any one of these media companies could be reverse engineered to the kind of anti-competitive behavior or weaponizing our elections, what if this podcast was found out to be taking ads from the foreign intelligence arm of the Russian government? I mean, what would happen to this podcast? So These guys get to play by a different set of rules, which leads to, I think, extraordinarily bad behavior. And the reality is, if you tell a 30-year-old male he's Jesus Christ, he's inclined to believe you, and he will play by his own rules. It's not their fault, it's ours.